informed decisions regarding your hormones, your health, and your life. Join me for all of October, the Women's Healing Circle, every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and What You Must Know, every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Also listen to any of these shows free of charge on the archives. The Progressive Radio Network is moving forward, and we hope you are coming with us.
Hi, this is Professor Mickey Huff, Director of Project Censored. Join me along with the head of the Media Freedom Foundation, Dr. Peter Phillips, for the Project Censored show. We'll be airing right here on the Progressive Radio Network every Tuesday beginning October 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. For the last 35 years, Project Censored has covered the news that doesn't make the news and tells you why in effort to be media democracy in action. By highlighting underreported stories and providing cutting-edge media analysis, we can counter the corporate media's top-down managed news propaganda. Be the antidote to the truth emergency we face. Don't miss the Project Censored show starting October 11th at 2 p.m. on the Progressive Radio Network. Progressive Radio Network is moving forward, and we hope you're coming with us.
You are listening to the Progressive Radio Network, your source for news and information.
Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin. I'm very glad you're joining us again today. And today we'll be going into a very important area in all of our lives that we don't really bring enough consciousness to. So in that regard, I have convened what I refer to as the Consciousness and Money Roundtable. And joining us will be two experts, really, in the area of money, economy, and understanding it both from a psychological point of view and our relationship with money, how that manifests, what belief systems underlie our relationship, and on the more outer level, looking at how money can serve our society in ways that go beyond just the ordinary selfish, greed-based profit motive, but opening up the subject to the idea of multiple bottom lines and the idea of socially conscious investing. So, before we launch into that, I just want to make a quick local announcement for those of you in New York City or who would like to be in New York City on the weekend of October 21st, 22nd, and 23rd at the New Yorker Hotel, where our dear Nikola Tesla once lived many, many moons ago, will be, again, for about the 22nd or so year, the New Life Expo that has been founded and directed by Mark Becker, one of New York's leading yogis, and we're very glad to always be part of it. A Better World every time, twice or so a year. Either I give a talk, or no, I guess I always give a talk, and moderate a panel on vibrational healing and energy medicine or nutrition or some such like that. I am on call. So it's really a splendid gathering. There are over 150 speakers, and if any of you are in the New York area or you would like to be, this is certainly a good incentive. That's the New Life Expo, and if you go to, I must believe it's newlifeexpo.com or on our website at www.abetterworld.net under events. We do have it listed. You can get that information about the details. So today we are going to first be speaking with Timothy Karsten and followed then by Stuart Valentine, and then the three of us will come together in the roundtable fashion, sort of like as an FDR style fireside chat, and we will talk about these subjects that I began to outline, sort of, you could say, the inner look of who we are relative to money and economy. Then taking a look at the larger outer picture. And the two are, of course, integral and always related, and one reflecting another. It's never one way. It's more of an infinite movement between the two, like a loop, a Mobius strip. So Timothy Karsten has been working with business and nonprofit leaders, wealthy individuals and families who are interested in, you could say, evolving or upgrading their relationship to money. You would think that it would be rather perfected if they were so wealthy, but Timothy has found that there is a whole other level that he has been able, as a consultant, to help them recognize about what is the relationship to money and wealth and ultimately their own spirit and consciousness, i.e., what do they do with that? i.e., how many cars or yachts can someone own? And what are the possible, relevant, social, political, environmental, humanitarian kinds of gifts, contributions, or within the capitalist system, investing in companies that are really designed to serve the people while making a profit. That will be followed by the president of Centerpoint Investment Strategies, Stuart Valentine, and his company is very involved with socially responsible investments, and there's an entire movement known by the acronym SRI, movement afoot across the United States and beyond, where people are really waking up to the potentials of money as energy and money for influencing change and transformation. It's very exciting. He has been involved in developing green private equity funds. He has been an expert in forward markets. He's worked in, he's got over 20 years experience working with individuals, clients, and others in this domain. He's got a lot of experience, and it'll be very interesting to hear him speak as well. And then we'll all come together. Interestingly, also, Stuart has a background in the meditation that came to us through the Beatles guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and has been living out in their, near their university, out in Fairfield, Iowa. So he's right smack in the middle of the country, whereas Timothy is, like me, on the opposite coast, sometimes called the left coast, in the LA area. So I'd like to open up today's show and roundtable with a quote from a book called Money, Understanding and Creating Alternatives to Legal Tender. And this can be a little bit of a launching point for us all to be thinking about. This is a book by Thomas Greco. Money is a topic that few people understand. Sure, we use it every day and it seems familiar, but like water to the fish, we take it for granted and seldom give it any notice. Yet the quality of the water that the fish inhabit is crucial in determining the quality of their existence. If the water happens to be polluted, the modern economy that we inhabit will be likewise. If the water happens to be polluted, the fish will sicken and die. Likewise, money is a primary element of the modern economy that we inhabit. The quality of the money we use determines, to a great extent, the quality of our lives. So, Timothy, are you on the line?
I am. Hi, Mitchell.
Hi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Timothy, you have such an interesting background. You have a degree in law, in international economic relations. You've been working with clients, as I was talking about, for many, many years. What is it that magnetized you to this world in the very first place?
Well, Mitchell, I was born into an affluent family, and I think that experience gave me many gifts in the form of opportunity and world travel, academic pursuits, and also access to very interesting people that were my parents' friends from many walks of life and from around the world. And so I was very engaged in the world of money and finance. My grandfather started one of the first finance companies in 1922 that financed some of the first automobiles on the road. And I recall my grandfather always saying, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the bottom line. And I would often listen to that comment and say, well, that's interesting. And something inside of me always said, well, which bottom line, or is it really all about the bottom line? And so that kind
of... And what is it, anyway, you know?
Well, in his mind, since he ran a finance company, it was the returns that he saw in his books based on the lending that he allowed to take place, engaged in his company.
Yes.
So, and then, of course, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and that's when the beginning of looking at the bottom line, expanding the bottom line, started to become part of our language more so into the 90s, and then certainly now there's a lot more conversation about what is the true bottom line.
Sure.
And so that, among other things, in terms of traveling around the world, working around the world, working in the finance world, working for large investment houses, managing family trusts and a foundation, and looking at how money was utilized, as well as being someone, because I walked in the circles of money and worked in the circles of money and running a foundation, people always identified me in a certain way based on that. So I decided that I wanted to explore this more deeply, and I did. And that led me to realize that I really had interest and some talent to support others in looking at these issues and these questions and digging in deep to find out who they are and what their relationship to money was, how they could use money effectively and purposefully and successfully in their lives.
So what have you found, Timothy, in you doing this exploration with your various clients, and also how has it made a difference for them and the larger society?
Well, the truth is, no matter how much money you have, everybody has a money story. Mm-hmm. And so I've worked with clients who don't have a lot of money, and I've worked with clients who have a lot of money. And one thing that's interesting to note is that people think that if you have money, you don't have a lot of questions about money, or you're not struggling with any decisions pertaining to money. But the truth is that everyone has challenges, areas where they're skilled, areas where they're less skilled, issues that seem to get them every time about money, whether it's paying for a particular bill or taxes or avoiding taxes or children and money and how they raise their children around money and not addressing questions around money with certain family members or certain business associates. So every person on the planet Earth, no matter how much they have or how little they have, has issues about or questions about money. So
sure.
That's the first thing.
Sure.
And as a result of that impacts every relationship we have, whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our children, whether it's with the people we work with, whether it's with the person we hire to clean our home or to take care of our garden. There's always issues around money or questions around money.
So when you get more specific, let's say if you reflect on some work you did, Timothy, with a particular client that you feel you were able to facilitate some change, some awakening, some new perspective on his or her relationship to money, and how that benefited the client directly and then their circle of influence, their sphere of influence. Could you cite a specific example that you feel, let's say, very pleased with the outcome?
Sure. So I think it's important to note that in spite of all the changes and the opportunities that are before us, that it's possible at any point in time for anyone to change and transform themselves and their relationship to money, and therefore the future of their world and our world. And that is vital for all of us to understand. And so an example of where that took place is when I helped a client who was really struggling with how to be in relationship with their children around money, because they had a lot and they wanted to do well by their children, but they just really didn't know what was the right strategies in dealing with their children. So what I encouraged this particular client to do was really sit down and talk with her children. And not so much about how much she had, but more about the role of money in her life, what it had meant, how they had worked hard to earn and gain this wealth, and what it meant to them and what they could do about this money. And in turn, sit down with their children and discuss that very experience for them, because a lot of times parents don't want to talk about money, and certainly in older generations it was a taboo to talk about
yes,
money.
Right.
So by encouraging...
You were just supposed to have it, not talk about it.
That's correct. That's correct. And therefore, by encouraging the conversation, it opened up an entire pathway for this family to come together to really open up about issues that they had never talked about. And as a result, what it created for them is they created a giving circle amongst themselves, whereby they took their assets, they came together, and they figured out, where do we want to invest our money collectively, where do we want to give it collectively, and it led to a much closer family unit, a much more united mission among themselves, and ultimately much better communication and relationships. And of course, the beneficiaries of that were not only themselves, but the organizations that received the funding and the investments that received the funding.
Wonderful. So it really acted as a catalyst to open up space in the relationships and improve the family at large.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
great. That's great.
Correct. One more example is when
Please.
I worked with a CEO, because I work with CEOs of different organizations, both for-profit and non-profit, and I was working with a CEO who runs a financial institution, and he really was seeking to develop better relationships with their customer base and offer some unique opportunities for their clients to be in relationship with money. So we design certain vehicles, certain tools for them to create a deeper relationship, a deeper connection, and education for clients around their money and how to use their money, and also how the financial institution was utilizing the money within its structures.
Very good. Very good. It's interesting. Money is a vehicle in so many ways, Timothy. Some think of it simply as an energy, some as a spiritual currency even. It's a way and a means of people interacting and transacting with each other who might not otherwise ever get to know each other. And it's a way of, needless to say, helping each other. And unfortunately, what we're looking at today is an attitude toward money that is creating such a major economic divide in this country and elsewhere in the world, where some 1% is controlling and owning 40% of all money and all assets. So, as with anything, a knife can either cut a loaf of bread or it could cut somebody's skin. Any comment?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I think you're seeing this Occupy Wall Street movement that we've seen begun now about the 1% versus the 99%.
Yes.
As a public conversation about what does it mean that so few have so much, and so many are struggling to pay bills and meet the needs of their families, and that is going to be a dialogue. I think now that it's become public, that's going to stay in our conversation, and more people, I think, will be given the opportunity to speak openly, not only in terms of Wall Street and government, but also within their own families. My hope is that this conversation begins to demystify the role of money in our lives.
Yes.
And begins to open all of us to have the opportunity to speak deep from our hearts, deep from who we are, about how we feel about money and our relationship to it.
Yes, exactly. Now, when you look, a last question for the moment is, when you look at yourself closely and your own values, Timothy, how do those relate to what it is you bring forth in your work in consulting with clients, be it a CEO or a wealthy individual?
Great question, Mitchell. So I look at money as a tool. Your quote, I thought, was quite excellent. And money is simply something to be utilized to make our lives better, to make them more interesting. And it's actually a tool to give us more freedom in our life.
Yes.
A lot of my work is about liberating people's thoughts and beliefs and practices around money and wealth and their relationship to it. So in working with clients, whether they're CEOs or wealthy individuals or families, I am always looking at where is the conflict, where is the tension, where is the lack of freedom that money could be utilized for, to liberate these individuals rather than to create stress. So I look at my own life. I say, okay, am I using money as a tool for my freedom, for my family's freedom, for the freedom of the people that I'm working with? Or am I using it as something that's a tool of control or a power struggle with someone? If someone wants money from me, how do I view the relationship? Do I treat that person differently if I'm in disagreement about how much they want to charge me? Et cetera. Because like everyone else, I've got to manage my finances and manage them well and look at what bill needs to be paid when, et cetera, et cetera. And it was interesting. I was speaking to my accountant the other day, and I noticed how my accountant was totally neutral when I was talking about the numbers related to my taxes. There was no emotion. And the truth is that most of us get very emotionally charged around money in one way, shape, form, or another. And what that conversation, what I try to do with my clients, is to neutralize the emotion, not to get rid of the passion and the desire which I have around money and the use of what I can do with my money, but to neutralize the negative emotions that we have around money.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. You reminded me just now, Timothy, of the conversation I had with my accountant also just the other day. And he too was neutral. He said, just pay it. And I said, but I'm feeding a war machine, man. Don't you get it? They're charging me a usurious interest of 5% a month. Where does a government, actually state government of New York, have the right to charge what is otherwise considered usurious? And he just said, you pay it. You feed the machine. You pay it. And that was an interesting lesson. The flatness of it was an interesting lesson.
Right, because you can sit there and get upset about it now, and they're not going to stop asking for that money.
That's right.
And it's going to cost you more if you don't pay it. So the truth is,
so I've learned,
it's easier to just pay it and move on and focus on what you're excited about in terms of money and the use of money and the making of money, and enjoy that. That's rather than focusing on what's not giving you.
Exactly, and learning to let go and make space for what's new.
Absolutely. I think, again, change is here at any moment in time. And one thought at a time can create that change, one action at a time. And one small shift in awareness can create just the hugest of positive energy for you and for the world. So that's what you've got to liberate in yourself and focus on, rather than things that are not providing for that.
It's funny, in our common parlance, we use this phrase, do you have any small change? On that note, I want to introduce Stuart Valentine. Thank you so much for your input, Timothy. It's really, really valuable. Yeah. I want to close out and open up with a quote of an older French economist and former minister of France, and was ministering during the Great Depression, but this was in France. And he says, "Money will decide the fate of mankind." Wow, powerful statement. So, Stuart Valentine, as I mentioned, is president of Centerpoint Investment Strategies and is an active participant in the socially responsible investment movement, which is really moving along. And I know both of you gentlemen have attended various conferences over time that are helping to promote this and increase its circulation, this idea of a more integrated value system when it comes to running businesses, growing companies, and making money. So, Stuart, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mitchell. I very much appreciate you honing in on this topic. I mean, just listening to you and Timothy go back and forth, I feel like you've got your finger on the pulse right now in American society. Isn't it interesting how this Occupy Wall Street is bringing everybody's attention around, trying to get greater comprehension of what is happening that is driving this?
Yes. Talk about it. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
I've spent, as you mentioned in the intro, I've spent a lot of time exploring the domain of consciousness as applies to my own life. I consider myself the primary laboratory is my own life and experience. And, reflecting on what Timothy was talking about just now, this really is about coming, in my worldview, it's about coming back to that center point, which is why we're named Centerpoint Investment Strategies.
I like
coming back to the self, because if we try to build a model of fulfillment, of enlightened society, it all starts with the individual. And so in the investment practice that I'm involved in, I really strive to unlock the full spectrum of the individual and how they play out what I call their destiny path, their mission, their purpose, through the investment exercise. I take a very different angle in this idea that money is simply an extension of your personal energy, and that money is an opportunity for greater self-revelation and empowerment. The current model around money, I think part of, for example, the Occupy Wall Street phenomenon, I think is a collective expression about feeling disempowered around money, confused around money. And I'll go back to this idea that the primary essence of us all is a field of consciousness, which when you think about it, this is a rather unbounded, infinite field. I mean, we talk about it in terms of spirit or unified field, and I look around me and see, abundant sunshine falling on the earth, and yet, when it comes to money, we seem to be existing in a field of scarcity and upset and greed and conflict around money.
Yes.
And what's the disconnect here? And I have spent quite a number of years, decades actually, thinking about this and trying to connect the dots based on a fundamental, what I'll call law of nature, which is the law of cause and effect. that what we're seeing in this statement, like you point out, there's 1% of American society owns estimated 40% of the wealth. I don't think that's happen chance or by accident. You can sort of connect the dots that it's actually by design, and that design could probably best be summarized in what is known as the fractional reserve banking system that drives a debt-based growth model, right? At interest. So if you've ever played that game
with compound interest, I mean,
that's it.
What you know what Einstein said about it? It's the seventh wonder of the world.
Exactly. I one of the first lessons I tried to teach my daughters growing up is I got the chessboard, and I started out with a big bag of pennies. Put 1 penny on the first square, 2 pennies on the second, 4 on the third, etc. And that is the ultimate lesson. I mean, this, by the way, is a lesson that has been learned by humanity a long time ago. If you recall, Jesus threw the money lenders out of the temple, right?
That's right.
So we are getting a precise effect of an underlying causal design, right? And so I fall back to my youth during high school. I had a mentor, a gentleman who was very early in the 70s onto what we now call sustainability theme. Back then it was appropriate technology. But his name was Tom Bender. He's still alive and well. But I've carried this quote around with me for 34 years now. It says appropriate technology, which you could just as easily replace the word sustainability. Appropriate technology reminds us that before we choose our tools and techniques, we must choose our dreams and values. For some technologies serve them while others make them unobtainable. And, if we go back to the cautionary words of Jefferson about turning the money power over to private for-profit central banking, that the net effect would be to wake up on the doorstep, with destitute.
That's right.
So what I'm really excited about in the new conversation about money, and there's many very deep thinkers who have chimed in on this. The most recent contribution is Charles Eisenstein's book titled Sacred Economics. He's very articulate about restoring a deep comprehension around money and connecting that with what you might call the heart field or the destiny path, and restoring a sense of sacred relationship between yourself and money. Because we've collectively externalized this and we've mistaken that pile of cash as the pathway to fulfillment and wealth. When, how many stories and case studies do we have of very wealthy, cash-rich individuals who live just miserable lives? Right?
One of the things, of course, when you have a lot of money, Stuart, is what you're going to do with it and who are you going to trust with it. And trust, at the end of the day, becomes one of the central issues of all of our lives in all domains. And just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you'll be able to hold on to it, number one. And is it something that you actually want to hold on to, number two. And, we have the statistics from the lottery winners that shows that if someone has lived a so-called lower middle class life or some such like that and has no developed, more matured relationship to money, that money will flow out of their hands before it actually even hardly hit the bank.
We can only live up to our self-generated concept of ourselves, and that's the principle here. And so
exactly
the theme of consciousness, I think, is so primary in this discussion because the way we move beyond the matrix that we have created for ourselves, which is fear and scarcity around money, by design, is to wake up to another vision of possibilities. And one of the mentors in my life has been Amory Lovins at Rocky Mountain Institute. I don't know if it was Amory or who on their team coined it, but the term that I think it really marks the direction here is design for abundance.
Yes.
Because at the base of who we are as human beings, not human doings, not consumers, but at the base of who we are as human beings, is a vast field of consciousness at our disposal. It's creative, dynamic, innovative. And so you apply that principle with the abundant flows of resources in nature, primarily the sun. Mm-hmm. And I think the ingredients are there to really deeply rethink the design of money and the role of money. As Timothy pointed out, money is a tool, right?
That's right.
But we've overlaid this whole story about cash money being something much more than it really is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And connecting that to the investment process is really exciting, because then you get more empowered around this idea that my money is an extension of myself, that money is creative in the marketplace, and I can actually go into the investment process with clear purpose and intention to go create the world that charms me.
Exactly.
Rather than turning it over to a faithful, turning it over to some faithless investment manager.
Institution, exactly. Let's let everybody know that you are listening to A Better World with Mitchell J. Rabin. We're talking about money, one of those very core issues in our lives. Money, sex, religion, these are those things that populate us, our consciousness as well as our unconsciousness, so powerfully, and lead us and guide us, in some ways influence us in ways we cannot even sometimes put our fingers on. We're on Progressive Radio Network. We're on every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please join us as you are now. And remember, you can go to our website at www.abetterworld.net, become part of the newsletter. And now at this point, I'd really like to open up the circle here, which is a fine geometric shape for all of us, as we talk about at the Roundtable this subject that is very dear to the three of us, consciousness and money. And on that note, actually, I would like to mention that, Timothy, you have a Destination Freedom newsletter that you send out, do you not, every week?
I do, and if people want to sign up for it, they can go to my website and actually take something that I've designed called a Freedom Questionnaire. That's a great little tool for seeing how free you are in relationship to money and your life. And if I can just give that link,
please.
Would that be okay?
Absolutely, please.
So they would go to TDKA Group, that's group.com/freedom.php. So that's tdkagroup.com/freedom.php.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Timothy. I enjoy your newsletter weekly. I really do.
Thank you so much.
And I not only get to manage money better, but also time. So, not to mention stress, but that's one of my subjects. So, I'd like to pick up on, first of all, a last thing that you were saying, Stuart, about opening up the field of intention, the heart field that you referred to when you spoke about Eisenstein, and the idea of being socially responsible with money and the kind of world it can create when people stop holding on and they commit a certain amount of what it is they have to projects that will help to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, well, it's really a primary reconfiguration around the story of money. And I use the biomimicry principle here, looking to nature to help guide us in how to design this new relationship with money. And one of the primary principles of life is circulation, for example.
Exactly.
So it's interesting, when you design money you produce it out of thin air and you apply an interest rate, you actually get rewarded for hoarding money. Well, that's look at your body. Your body depends on the flow of blood throughout the body. The body just doesn't hold on to all the blood in your head, or else your body's
or in your heart, even, for that matter.
Right. But you also have to manage that money or that blood flow properly.
Yep.
You don't just spill it all out.
Sure.
But the idea here, of course, is to, again, connect that primary field of I am, I'll call it I am, spirit, consciousness. You came to this life with some direction, some purpose. I really appreciate Timothy's newsletter titled Destination Freedom.
Yes.
That is why we're here on this earth, in my estimation. And money is just one way to serve you on that journey. Now, this does not mean just, going out there without any preparation or doing. You still need to do good homework about how to guide those investments. But it's really an opportunity for you to actually be in higher integrity with your money, because you're actually stepping into accountability around it.
Yep.
You're engaged with the process and directing the money consistent with your underlying belief systems and values. And this, by the way, is an area that I think holds tremendous opportunity around the Occupy Wall Street process, is that we're fundamentally trying to get more clarity about what our collective belief system around money is. Is it really just to give a few players at the very top who have, through luck or inheritance or
well, you talked about cause and effect, and you were talking about design before. So how does that figure into that idea of luck?
Well, there are individuals who I don't know. Luck is an interesting equation. I've always fondly held on to the equation that it's where preparedness plus opportunity meet.
Exactly.
If you're prepared and you take the opportunity, you often find yourself producing lucky circumstances for yourself, right?
Indeed.
So the dynamic, though, that I think is quite evident is that money at the moment is serving a narrower and narrower base of our collective family, right? And if we take the attitude that the world is my family, we take a more holistic view of society.
Yes.
I mean, does it make any sense for one member of the family to be feasting in plenty while the brothers and sisters are hurting deeply?
You sound like me. I say this kind of thing all the time. And I think one of the things that is aggravating the wound that is being represented, even if somewhat generically, down through this Occupy Wall Street movement, which is now spread to some 25 cities across the country and even to other countries, is this idea that John Kenneth Galbraith captures in this. The process by which banks create money is so simple that the mind is repelled. Now that relates to that notion you were speaking of regarding the hoarding tendency of, because of fractional interest, because the more you hold, the more you get, which is in absolute contradistinction to the nature of nature, where abundance flows. Remember that old study that was done when monkeys in the wild tend to eat just what it is they need when it comes to bananas or any food, or share it, which is just a natural phenomenon among mammals and humans. And when they were delivered hordes, if you will, of bananas, they themselves began to hoard the bananas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, now, Timothy, you indicated in the introduction, having grown up in a family of wealth, how would you reflect on this? Because does it feel that way in your experience around individuals
I'm
or
glad
families
you asked that
have
question, Stuart.
the good fortune of accumulation of large wealth?
Yeah.
Well,
what are the attitudes?
I think it depends on your family. In my family, we were encouraged to be philanthropic, to think of other people, we were pleased to have wealth and the benefits of wealth. We were not ashamed in any way or thought taught to hide our wealth, but we weren't taught to expose it and
be ostentatious.
But we were taught to be grateful for it, appreciative of it, and also think about other people. So I think it really depends on your family. Now, I grew up from Midwest values, which may have had something to do. There was money in various generations, but I think you have to look at what is driving the need to express your wealth and how you view your wealth. I was listening to you talk about interest rates and making as much as you can and squeezing the interest rates, and I think part of the issue is that people don't really know. The experts know, but for the great part, and I've noticed this with a lot of my clients, they just don't know how their money is made in the investment world.
Right.
Or how it produces the return.
Right. That's a very good question.
When you talk about an interest rate on Treasury notes, well, how does that really work?
Where is the money coming from, in other words? You're asking that question. Where is the money coming from?
And I don't think people don't either have the time, the interest, or it's too complicated, so they leave it, and they just. But I think the other thing is there's this drive that's been developed in our investment thinking that we have to get the biggest return we can possibly get. You win the game if you get the most.
Exactly.
That's the way the rules of the game have been set up.
Yes. And what do you think about that when you counsel your clients? Because the three of us are more or less agreeing that more is not always better if money is really an expression of our consciousness and an extension thereof. There is this notion in nature called balance and moderation. And how do these figure in to the larger picture, and how we can be conscious and conscientious, socially conscious in our dealing with money and each other?
Can I take a stab at that?
Please.
I think one of the aspects of that is a part of growing into mature adulthood is a critical examination of what I would call your naive belief systems that were adopted in childhood. And gosh, as I listened to you describe, Timothy, the values that you grew up with around money, I would see that an individual that had that sense of appreciation and consideration of others and giving, i.e. philanthropy, that individual in my book is wealthy even if they didn't have a lot of cash, right? And so establishing a greater comprehension of what wealth is in terms of a set of values that nurtures the whole being that you are is this process of growing up. And so much of our belief systems around money were adopted, at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And isn't it interesting that some high schools, of course, teach about economics and investment in money, but most of the time people finish their 12 years of school without hardly any basic understanding of this matrix of money that is out there, right?
No idea.
It's a huge, what I would say societally, it's a huge unexamined belief system. Most of us, like you say, Timothy, are clueless about how it's all working.
Wouldn't it be fun to be, but wouldn't it be fun to be, I imagine that through classrooms throughout America today, teachers, because kids are living in cities where Occupy Wall Street is happening, so teachers are having to address the questions, well, why are they doing this? What is this about? Yeah. And I would imagine that that's creating a fantastic
dialogue
among these young people.
Very true.
About the role of money and how money works and why people are rich and why others aren't. And
exactly.
And I think you're right, Stuart. It's really defining what wealth is and what wealth means to you and how you express that definition of wealth. And then how that relates to...
Go ahead.
Well, just how that relates to your investment policy, your investment strategy, how you run your company, how you compensate your employees. Once you define what wealth is and what all the components are, then you can begin to integrate that into all of the areas of your life and work.
You know, there's the old joke that says, you know, oh, are you kidding me? I'm incredibly wealthy, and someday I'll have some money too.
Yeah, right. And this is where if it's an inside-out affair, meaning that this is being generated consciously from your own sense of self-worth, you know, I think what we have to be very careful about in America today is somehow, you know, if somebody has been creative and earned a tremendous amount of money and they're in that 1% category, suddenly, you know, it's being seen as the bad guy. Well, I think that is, we stand at a precipice here within this country.
Yes.
Where if we start, you know, pointing the finger that it's those guys that are making me miserable, that is not what I would say taking responsibility for the situation. I feel a bit of tough love around this one with respect to the Occupy Wall Street phenomenon, is that each one of us, you know, has to really own up to the very real fact that this is about our personal creation, and looking outside of ourselves is a trap and is one that's probably guaranteed to disappoint.
I want to counter that a little bit, though.
We can come forward with better design.
I'd like to counter that, in as far as a larger design, because if you have a system operating that always favors the few at the expense of the many, and every single place you look, Stuart, in the matrix, the ones with little have very little mobility to change that situation, then you're looking at, in other words, it's not just intrapsychic, is what I'm saying. There's a systemic level of, I will say very blatantly, corruption and complicity between government and the corporate world that has managed to look at the subprime mortgage situation, for instance. How can I don't think it's at all reasonable to say that those people that applied for those mortgages at that time and were able to get into a house for $500 a month for 2 years, and then it got chalked up to $2,500 a month because they didn't read the fine print or whatever the deal was, that they are, you know, to be blamed or even responsible for that kind of phenomenon. But the people who designed those mortgages are responsible. Your thoughts, both of you? I'd like to hear what you both have to say about that.
Go ahead, Timothy.
Because that's a very nuts and bolts application of the idea of social consciousness in the domain of money.
Well, the way I view it, Mitchell, is there are certain cases, certainly, where the individuals were misled by the funding institutions as to getting in mortgages that were not going to ultimately be favorable or possible for them to meet the commitments on.
Favorable, affordable,
There are also examples where individuals were given mortgages that should not have been given mortgages.
Absolutely, probably most of them, actually.
Exactly, and so is that the responsibility of the lending institution or the individual? I think it probably falls on both. But again, there's not a huge amount of financial literacy in this country, even though we are so dominant in our psyches and our thinking about being the great American financial power in the world. When you break it down to individuals, there's not a great deal of financial literacy. So there's an inherent problem in that we have been sold in a lot of ways this dream, this vision, which this is part of what Occupy Wall Street is about, is rebuilding this American dream for people in America. But the problem is, what is that dream based on? which goes to the questions of what is the role of money, where is sustainability in this conversation, where are all of the components of health and well-being in terms of the entire ecosystem of our world. And so I think what a lot of people are looking at is how do we, yes, we've come to this point, yes, we've got these problems, but what do we do now in having these problems? How do we redesign the systems so that we build healthy ecosystems of wealth and financial literacy and sustainability?
Exactly. Those are very well positioned questions, and
I would
they
say
need to guide us.
If that inquiry is done from a place of what I call an inside-out empowered position, then it's an opportunity to redesign my relationship around money. And that's, in my view, more constructive for myself than coming at it that this is a problem that needs to be solved, and I'm a victim of the problem. Now, like Timothy pointed out, there are two sides to this coin. I completely don't want to minimize the distress out there, but the effectiveness by which we each as individuals and collectively come forth on this, if we see this as an opportunity to become more empowered around money, and accountable to our own choices and decisions, and actually own that life that we have been so graciously given, then I think we end up as a healthier social unit.
I agree with you. I want to thank you both so much for weighing in today on our roundtable on money and consciousness, and it just opened up the field, and we'll have to re-engage again because, as you can see, we've just opened the door a slight bit. Do you both have websites you'd like to give one more time? We'll have to do so quickly.
So if listeners are interested, I have a 4-part article series that traces the evolution of socially responsible
Just give the website.
And it's centerpointinvesting.com, just like it sounds. Centerpointinvesting.com.
Thank you, Stuart Valentine, so much. And Timothy, your website one more time?
Mine is tdkagroup.com.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both, gentlemen. It's my pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Mitchell.
Absolutely. Loved having you both on. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. Visit us at our website at www.abetterworld.net, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Also, tune in tomorrow night to A Better World TV at 10:30. Just go to our website, all the information's there. And now Gary Null has an explosive show for you for the next hour on material you do not want to miss. Thanks again, and see you next week.
Do you want to know the latest news or upcoming events? Follow us at Twitter at PRN_radio or click the Twitter icon on our homepage. You can also